Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Personal Trainers Who Care. Today, I have a dear friend of mine. His name's Aakrist. We actually went to the same high school. We didn't even realize until after we met. But I actually met him at a workshop about the importance of play, led by a mutual friend of ours. And then I worked with him personally on, he's a breath coach. Missed that whole part. He's a breath coach, and I worked with him personally on improving my own breathing. And I wanted to have him on today because that is a niche that I am obsessed with. If you've worked with me and you know that it goes into everything that I do with my clients, and it's a rabbit hole that just keeps going. And Aakrist is the man you want to talk to if you want to know more about what he calls breath cultivation. So I'm going to hand it off to Aakrist. He's going to introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about what the heart of what you do is and why you do what you do and what you do.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And what got me into this? Because it started with my first breath that I took in this life.
I exited the womb.
When it really entered my field was, well, I guess I really do have to go back to my first breath. I was born in Nepal and lived there for the first 7 years of my life. Beautiful, colorful, mountainous ranges. You smell something new every day. You see something new every day. And then at 7, I moved to Ottawa, Canada. Totally displaced from home, right? Got to learn a new language, make new friends. I don't fit in at home. I don't fit in at school. So very early on, I'm asking this question, why and what? I'm just curious why I'm in this different environment. And as I got older into high school, I actually went to St. Pat's, not St. FX, but we had a lot of mutual friends.
Oh, that's why. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, close. We're close. So I went to St. Pat's, which is a Catholic high school. And in the morning, everyone's doing the cross, standing up, doing the cross. I'm like, what is that? What is that? What does that mean? I have no idea. Trying to put all the pieces together. I go home. There's Hindu Buddhist tapestries everywhere. So very early on, I'm asking the question, what? Why? What is life? What is the meaning of God? And trying to interpret this. So my dad recommended I go to my very first Vipassana retreat out of high school, which is a 10-day silent retreat. No speaking, no reading, no writing.
Sorry, how old?
I was 18, right out of high school. So no speaking, no reading, no writing. But they feed you. They teach you the technique. They house you. Everything's for free. It's donation-based. Super recommend if anyone's interested. They actually have one in Montebello, which is like an hour north of Ottawa. And that's where I had my first out-of-body experience. And all we do there is breath awareness. We're just watching the breath come in, go out, eventually evolving to body awareness, body scanning. No drugs, no medicine, no nothing. Just you with yourself. And I had my first and only out-of-body experience on the 8th day. Became as light as a feather and as heavy as a rock simultaneously. Became the room. So coming out of that experience, I was like, what? If my breath can do that for me, what else can it do for me? So I got my hands on anything I could. Podcasts, resources, books, courses, yoga. And immediately I saw performance or improvement in my performance. I played soccer all my life. And this was 10 years ago, so 2015. And this is when Wim Hof is really popular because he just did his 2013 study with E. coli and fighting it off. So he was like very early stages of booming. And that was my first few practices in the first 3 years or so. And my performance improved just with the pranayamas and the Wim Hofs, but I noticed I was still getting injured. And that had been a pattern for me playing sports. Overwork, injury, overwork, injury, overwork, injury. And if you live in the West, you can probably relate to that. This culture of working so hard that you eventually burn out and crash into crisis. So it's my first game back from my knee injury. I'm like beaming. I'm so excited to play. I want to prove to my teammates I belong. I want to prove to my coach he should start me every game. So I'm flying into every tackle, having so much fun. 90th minute of the game, last minute of the game, we're down 2 goals. No way we're going to come back. But I'm having so much fun. I'm flying into every single tackle. So I see a 50-50 challenge. Anybody can win the ball. So I go rushing in. Full speed. Shoulder check the guy. Pop. Land on my bad knee. I hear a pop.
No.
That's when I knew I wouldn't be playing the rest of the season.
Oh, no.
So again, overworking, injury. My first game back, I got injured. I had to hurt this same knee 3-4 more times until I ended up just getting surgery. So completely devastated, 6 months on the sidelines, can't do anything. Can't run, can't have the ball at my feet, pure recovery, icing my knee. So this is actually when I came across the foundation of what I teach now called Oxygen Advantage. I was devastated back then, but looking back now is this perfect opportunity for me to actually deepen my studies with the breath. And that's when I realized I could actually improve my stamina and accelerate my recovery, get back on the field faster with a seated breath practice. And I could actually improve my stamina with a seated breath practice. That's exactly
so the initial motivation came from wanting to get back into soccer again? Okay,
Yeah.
but you couldn't train because you had a knee injury, so you wanted to find a way to increase your stamina without having to run, obviously. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So I got back on the field faster and I had a brand new baseline of stamina that I'd never experienced before. You know, as athletes, we're taught that the way to get to your next level is you got to bash your head through this wall of hard work, work so hard, puke until you magically level up. And that's often just not the case. For many people, that leads to injury.
Or illness.
And that's when I realized no one taught me how to breathe. Not my doctors, not my coaches, not the physios, not my parents, not my teachers. And they didn't even know either.
No one knows.
But that's when it clicked for me finally. Holy crap. I don't know. Can I swear here?
Yeah. No, that's
Anyways,
fine.
Okay. Holy
You're
shit.
good.
I'm like, wow, no one taught me how to breathe. So that's when it clicked. I'm like, wow, I've got to refine and teach this. So that's what really sparked this whole journey.
Okay, so it's funny. It's something that I talked about with a friend of mine who I had on the podcast before. It's so many people in the health and wellness industry are here. Like, it's a stereotype that everyone in the health industry is actually sick, or everyone who has come into this industry or come to know something about health and wellness is because they experienced something themselves and something has changed and they were like, oh my God, people need to know about this. So how has that manifested for you? Like, number one, what's something that you want everyone to walk away with when they work with you, and what's something that everyone needs to know about the breath? I know there's a million things, but
very simply, your breath serves you through your entire life, and many of us don't have any relationship with it. We just go through our days not even minding how we breathe. Often it's through the mouth, shallow, sharp.
Sharp. Explain that for a second.
Shallow, mouth breathing, shallow breathing, sharp breathing, because we're not taught how to breathe. And as athletes, when I was training, when I was doing beep tests, when I was competing, I was just breathing from my mouth, sharp, shallow. And that actually created more injury for me. So didn't have any relationship with it. I didn't have any reverence for it. And when we start to cultivate that awareness and that relationship with our breath, literally every single aspect of our life improves because it is the foundation of life. So when you start to cultivate your breath, you're not just going to become a better athlete. You're going to become a better human. You'll be more present in your relationships. You'll be more fulfilled in life because the thing that is fulfilling you is more nourished, your breath.
Yeah. Every cell becomes more nourished from it. I want you to dive a little bit more into the mouth, shallow, sharp thing, because that's such a profound and simple way to explain the general dysfunction that's happening right now. And I think so many people in general, you look up, help for anxiety, or, I'm feeling breathless. First thing that comes up is you need to stop breathing so shallow and you need to breathe diaphragmatically. And then on the other side of it, we're sort of in the same world on separate ends, where I'm more on the biomechanical side of things with integrating it with the strength training, and you're more on like the breath hold side of things, the physiological side of things. And from what I've seen is a lot of people don't know what it means to diaphragmatically breathe. And a lot of the advice out there, from what I know, guides people generally in the right direction to pay attention to their breath, but in the wrong direction. And then it's all, you need to belly breathe, and they're filling their bellies. Your lungs are in your chest. You need chest expansion. That's still important. We can dive into that a little bit more after and about the body mechanics of breathing. But why is mouth breathing bad? Why is shallow breathing bad? And why is sharp breathing bad? And what do they all indicate on a nervous system level, on a regulation level?
So first I'll start with what it indicates. Mouth shallow, sharp breathing indicates emergency, and that someone's living in a state of emergency and stress, which we as human beings, any living being is not meant to be living like that. And when we are living in a state of emergency day to day, moment to moment, that eventually becomes what we call burnout, crisis, disease, or injury. And this is why I don't like calling what I teach breathwork. It's the exact opposite of breathwork, because culturally, we have this conception, as you mentioned, like breathe into your lungs. Like, okay, yes, we breathe into our lungs, but we don't breathe from our lungs. And just that itself is so important, because we truly breathe from our diaphragms. We have 3 diaphragms: pelvic diaphragm, your pelvic floor, abdominal diaphragm, and then your tongue. So when we breathe through the mouth, we don't have access to any of that. So the moment we start to connect to those 3 diaphragms, the breath naturally falls deeper. And it's this biochemical feedback loop, physiological feedback loop that automatically moves us out of that route of burnout, fight or flight, injury, stress, emergency. Yeah. And this is what this looks like in your life. You may not notice it. This looks like waking up tired. This looks like not being able to fall asleep. This looks like being angry all the time, reactive to the people you love. This looks like road rage, even though like everyone's just trying doing to get their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that emotional reactivity that really prevents us from being at peace.
So true. And I've been working on a blog post, and you're reminding me of something, like the last paragraph that I was writing about it is that, the way you breathe is the way you move and the way that you live. It is not just, okay, like I think it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, I know how to breathe. Okay, I take a breath in, I take a breath out. So much more than that. Whether you're using your nose or your mouth will completely change the mechanics, the way that your body is utilizing your breath, the way it uses oxygen, how much oxygen you're actually you have circulating in your bloodstream. And like you said, it makes you angry. It makes you reactive. It completely takes you out of your body. When you are able to hone your breath, everything changes on an emotional, physical, physiological, psychological, biomechanical level. I want you to go a little bit more into what changes biochemically, you said, with the breath.
So biochemically, before I get into that, I want to touch on a little bit of the biomechanics. So for those watching the video, I want you to look at my water bottle. Actually, I'm going to take a sip first. So we know when we hold the water bottle, we know what's upright, right? This is the way it's supposed to rest on the ground. This is mouth breathing. This is trying to balance your breathing, this thing that keeps you alive, or the wine bottle's upside down, which means you're perpetually trying to find your center rather than just boop, anchored. You have resources to run. I can make eye contact with you. I can move without it actually stressing me out. So biochemically, mouth breathing literally puts you upside down in emergency. Yeah. And the biochemical implications of that is simply stress and acidity. So when we talk about biochemistry, the most important thing to cover first is carbon dioxide and the reason we breathe. So the reason we breathe isn't actually to inhale. The reason we breathe is to exhale. Carbon dioxide is the neural drive to breathe. So what does this look like? This looks like when you go to the gym, you start jogging. Okay, maybe you're jogging with your mouth, or rather, you start jogging. Maybe you're start breathing with your nose, and then a minute goes by, 2 minutes, 5 minutes goes by. Surprise, you start breathing from your mouth. And that's not to get in more oxygen. That's to exhale the carbon dioxide that's building up in your bloodstream and your tissues and your lungs. So CO2 is the neural drive to breathe. And the reason is because there's too much CO2 in the blood goes acidic, sepsis occurs, meaning the waste goes back into your bloodstream, and then disease ensues. So very specifically to avoid that, the brain's like, hey, keep an eye out for that carbon dioxide. He's the most important thing to survive and to breathe. So CO2 is a waste gas, and it's the only molecule that actually allows for oxygen delivery. So I'll make a distinction here between two things. One is oxygen uptake, one is oxygen delivery. Oxygen uptake is your inhale now. Oxygen from the outside of you, environment, gets into your lungs and then into your bloodstream. So you've successfully uptaked oxygen from the outside of you to the inside of you. Now, oxygen delivery is a whole different story. Oxygen delivery is when the blood or the oxygen that is in your bloodstream now gets into your tissues, which means the brain, the muscles, the organs. So here's an analogy for you guys. Close your eyes. It's 9 a.m. Doors of the school open. Kids come rushing into the hallways. But all the classroom doors are locked. They can't get into the classrooms where the learning actually happens, which is the reason we go into school in the first place. So those children in the hallways is oxygen in your bloodstream. The classroom is your brain, your muscles, your organs, where we actually need the oxygen, right? Because if they're just roaming around in the hallways, it's useless. In order for those children to get into the classroom, aka for the oxygen in your bloodstream to get into your brain, your muscles, your organs, a key is needed. So the teacher needs to come along with the key to open the doorway to the classroom. That key is carbon dioxide. Without the carbon dioxide, the kids stay stuck in the hallways. It's literally useless, which means the oxygen in your bloodstream only stays in your bloodstream. So that's why CO2 is the most important thing. And actually, without CO2, oxygen is literally useless.
Okay. And how do we know that we need more CO2 in our bloodstream, right? Because it's like, people are like, oh no, it's a waste gas, but you know, the dose makes the poison, right? Obviously, we don't want too much CO2, but we also don't want too little. So what does that look like? How do we know? You mentioned not being able to fall asleep, not staying asleep, waking up tired. How do we know that we need more CO2, and what can we do about it? What's step one?
Step one, well, there's the BOLT score. There's a diagnostic we can do to determine our CO2 tolerance. BOLT stands for Body Oxygen Level Test, BOLT. And that is a measurement of our carbon dioxide tolerance. So how we take it is we take a normal breath in, normal breath out. It's how you're breathing right now unconsciously. So it's not a conscious, deep breath filling your lungs. That's not normal breath. Normal breath is unconscious breath. So you go normal breath in, normal breath out. Just let the breath fall to neutral zero. So imagine a parachute falling from the sky. It lands on the ground. You're not going to dig with a shovel into the soil. You're just going to land on the ground. So normal breath in, normal breath out. Exhale, tap, and pause your breath. Hold your breath until you feel the first definitive sign.
After the exhale.
After the exhale. So very important, not the inhale, on the exhale. Yep. Hold your breath until you feel the first sign to breathe and start a timer. When you feel that first sign to breathe, stop the time, and that's how you'll know your BOLT score. So the threshold for functional breathing is 25 seconds. If you're above 25 seconds, there's a 90% chance you're a functional breather. If you're below 25 seconds, there's a 90% chance you're a dysfunctional breather. And most people I work with, even athletes, they're at 10, 15 seconds because they're mouth breathing all the time, especially during performance and training.
I was reading an article a couple weeks ago. It was a study of Japan, I think. It found that in a study of like over 1,200 athletes or something like that, less than 10% of them were diaphragmatic breathers, meaning they are using their diaphragm, probably breathing nasally. Most people are not breathing nasally, especially during exercise. Especially during exercise. And people think automatically you need to be breathing through your mouth. Even with some of my clients who I do breath holds with at the end of techniques, they're uncomfortable after 5 seconds. So, like you said, 25 seconds. That's the benchmark is kind of far away compared to where most people are sitting. And I fell into this because I've done a lot of reading about it and what we know from that is that it is actually an epidemic right now. It is insane. Can you go into that a little bit more, and what's causing this? How do we know that this is a problem beyond just not being able to hold your breath for more than 10, 15 seconds, and not being able to fall asleep?
Yeah. One word comes to mind, and this is the theme, is rhythm. I mean, your breath is your ultimate biorhythm. In, out, the rhythm of that dictates your biochemical balance. It also dictates your biomechanical effectiveness, The word is rhythm because today we live in such a fast pace. Phones, cars, airplanes, everything's moving so fast. And that is one factor, but it's like the theme is rhythm, because fast food, it's quick, easy, we're not eating well, we're not sleeping well. And the rhythm of how people in the West specifically are living is way too fast. And the breath then mimics that rhythm by speeding up because it's stressful. It becomes an emergency state. What was the question?
It was sort of why beyond, just like most people don't care about being able to hold their breath for 10 to 15 seconds. You're not a free diver. Why does it matter? And how is it going to transform their life to pay attention to this? Because it's so hard to see, I guess, just how good your life can get when you're thinking about it on such a macro level. I think for most people, when they want to make a change, especially physiologically, it's because they're in immediate pain. And it's really hard to stick to something. For example, with physio, so many people go to physio, they're in pain, and, sometimes the physio doesn't work and they just learn to live with their pain, or sometimes the physio does work, but then, there's instructions to keep going because you want to get to a baseline functionality, not just get out of pain, right? And that sort of goes into the theme of fast food, fast instant gratification, right? You're trying to get away from pain and closer towards pleasure, and as soon as you can shut off that pain, everything seems fine. It's good enough, right? Why do we want to get to that 25 seconds?
Yeah. And we don't have to,
right, yeah.
And some people may be happy enough, and my coach said, my breath coach said, you don't know how good you don't feel. Shout out Brian Mirabella.
So true.
And when you cross that threshold of, holy shit, I could have been feeling this good my entire life. And that's what clicked for me too. It's wow, are people living in that state where it's not fulfilling? So it's really, you don't have to, but the question is, do you want to live a fulfilled life?
Well, how are your clients responding to it? What are some things what are wins that they're experiencing that is sort of validating why you do what you do?
It's funny. She just posted some testimonials today, so I was looking back at them today. And the funniest thing is my clients, some of them go, I don't know if it's just a coincidence. Am I just imagining things? But I'm finally had the best night's sleep ever. I actually slept through the night for the first time.
Yes.
How long have you been not sleeping through the night? Years, I can't remember. And so how valuable is that for us to actually sleep through a full night and wake up rested? And there's a variety of things that I can touch on.
Well, that exact thing happened to me, actually. I was not sleeping through the night after I went through a very stressful period in my life and came to Aakrist after. And as soon as I started doing breath holds, and it's something that I do every single night now before I go to sleep, I started sleeping through the night again, immediately. And it's the only way that my nervous system has come down. Nothing else has touched what breath holding has done for me. And I'm sure that you get that all the time, the sleep stuff and the getting up in the night to pee. And it's not because you drank water before you went to bed.
Yeah. And that actually reminds me of another client who she came to me. We started working together where I think she had a vaccine injury or something and paralyzed. She used to be an avid athlete, cycled a lot, up in the hundreds kilometers per week. And devastated, got the shot, and couldn't anymore, could barely walk a kilometer without feeling pain. And so when she came to me, she was in so much pain, like nerves just, couldn't handle it. And then within a few weeks, that pain actually started to die down. And I think she was in the same cohort as you.
Oh, really?
And that was last year. This year, she's biking again.
Wow.
I think she just completed a race. And right now she's hiking a mountain in Europe at very high altitudes. So in just a year, she was able to go from paralyzed essentially in so much pain to gently improving her athletic performance, and now back and beyond.
Right. Because that's also like the nerve reaction and the shaking is an indication of a nervous system that's overshot, right? Like something was turning her on to the point that like her nervous system could not calm down. And what that breath training was doing was bringing her back and restoring her ability to go from training hard, breathing harder, exercising, to coming down, being able to down-regulate and go to sleep, and restoring that rhythm that you were talking about of going high and coming low again. How does that specific topic reflect what people talk about in terms of their athletic performance and coming up and then coming back down again?
One of my friends said, he was quoting one of his friends. I think it went something like, I'm trying to remember. You can never work out too much. Only recover too little. And the moment you start recovering faster, the moment you start repairing faster than the rate of your breakdown, that's real true growth. So this touches on resilience, because we think of resilience as grind through, work hard.
How much pain can you suffer through? Yeah.
And it's actually just a recipe for disaster. You can look at David Goggins. He has to stretch 4 hours a day. It's like, I don't want to do that, you know? It's like, why?
No.
Why?
Go
We're
hard.
not meant for that.
Go hard, be hard.
And I can understand the sentiment.
Yes.
But really, truly, that's a recipe for disaster. So not only does recovery become faster, but performing at a high level becomes so much easier, because your breath now allows you to go beyond the threshold you're experiencing because of more cellular resources you have. And it's not through working hard, through playing smart and actually doing less.
And it's not even just about, you can have all these recovery tools. You can have the massage gun. You can have the sauna. You can have the cold plunge. And honestly, anyway, that's a topic for another day. But
I saw the tangent.
That's a topic for another day. But it's honing your breath increases the amount of resources that you have within yourself. And it's not just like all these things that you're taking from outside of yourself, some new recovery product, some new, membership to some wellness gym or something like that you feel like is going to up your performance, right? And it's completely free, and it comes from within. And it's so funny that you keep saying resilience, because that is the exact word that's been bumping around in my head for the past, 5 years, about what it means to train your breath. Because you can ask people to reduce stress all day. What the hell does that mean? How are you going to tell that to, a mother of 5 who works a full-time job, who also has to work out now, who also has to get a full night's sleep and manage her social life? Honing your breath means that your nervous system can truly rest when you need it to, and can bounce back into that rest and digest state between, sleep, right? Throughout your day. Your body's constantly trying to downregulate and try to recover, even if you're not sleeping. So being resilient is increasing your capacity for stress. It's not just reducing stress is not about making your life smaller, although sometimes that is the case for some people, like you're just doing too much. But being able to do a lot, people who have high-powered lifestyles and aren't being killed by them, it's because there's something within them that is fueling them. There is some sort of biological resilience that is allowing them to bounce back from whatever they're doing. It's about being able to, have the workout, the super hard workout, but you're able to completely bounce back and rest after it. Resilience is being able to have more room for more in your life. And it's not about, constantly stressing about having to shrink your life, because your cup overflows when you have resilience.
Yeah. And it's effortless.
Yes. That's such a great distinction.
And resilience is really the softness is so necessary for resilience. You look at a stick, okay? Yes, you can generate force with the stick, but you can generate a lot more force with an elastic band if you just pull it back, the recoil, right? And even with the punch, it's like you can just punch with a closed fist all the way, but if you just relax, loosen, and you can create so much more force when you have that capacity for softness. And that brings into mind the Sherpa people of the Himalayas from Nepal. They are known to be one of the most resilient people on the planet. They're the people guiding people all the way up to summit Everest.
You see the videos and the people are like, what?
And they're carrying everyone's backpacks.
Yeah.
And they're not on any tanks or nothing, and they're not taking any medication. They're not doing anything on top of that. It's because their physiological makeup is so rare and resilient, because they live at such extreme conditions, high altitude, that they are effortlessly resilient.
Can you explain living at high altitude and what that does, and what that means for their physiology, and how you can simulate that with training your breath?
Yeah. So high altitude training is what elite athletes will do to prepare for competition. They'll go up to higher altitudes where there's not as much oxygen in the air. Air is thinner, so that everything they do becomes harder. Walking is harder. Training is harder. Recovery is even harder because there's not as much air. And one step at higher altitudes can be the equivalent of 5 steps down here. So imagine that compounding into even just a 10-minute jog, right? So what happens is your body learns to be very efficient and effective at using the oxygen that is available. The very little oxygen that is available. And with the Sherpas who are just living there, athletes call it high altitude training. For Sherpas, just going on a walk in the village, just living life. And so that creates more red blood cells in the bloodstream, which is, in the world of athletics, specifically cycling and endurance sports, it's a terrible, terrible, terrible epidemic, we can say. If you watch the documentary Aakrist, it's about blood doping. Yeah. And you probably know the name
Lance Armstrong.
Armstrong. I was going to say Neil. I'm like, which one's which? Lance Armstrong. He won 7 Tour de France titles throughout his entire successful career. 2012, stripped of all of them because he was found to be doping throughout his entire career. And he was blood doping to produce EPO, erythropoietin, which actually just signals the body to create more red blood cells. So if he knew he could actually blood dope naturally, create EPO naturally, and saturate his blood with more red blood cells to have the same level of endurance, maybe he could have kept all his titles. And that's the physiology that the Sherpa have attained effortlessly, just because of their
live at high altitude, right?
Yeah. And we, right now, we can mimic their altitude anywhere in the world with our breath. And when people think of breath, it's like, oh, it's just breathing. That's for pussies. It's yoga. It's like, you try holding your breath and moving. That is going to be the hardest thing you will do in life. Forget the bench press. Forget the deadlifts. Like, try holding your breath and mimicking physiological death. That is going to be 10 times harder than any weight you're going to lift. And people don't really recognize that. And because it's so close to physiological death, you can actually create faster adaptations than, let's say, you're just running for 50 minutes. You don't need to run for 50 minutes. You can simulate high altitude training for 10 to 15 minutes and get more results.
Yeah, such a hot take, right? Because so many people are like, oh, you need to get your If you want to get better at running, you got to run for sure. But you can work on your endurance without having to go on a ton of runs all the time. Because if you have a higher CO2 tolerance, if you have better oxygen delivery, if you have a higher red blood cell count, your body is able to oxygenate more effectively without having to do miles upon miles upon miles on your body, especially. And you know, so many runners who are chasing this dream and have knee pain, have foot pain, have hip pain. Their bodies are breaking down and they have a great ability to run marathons, but they're mouth breathers. Like the amount of marathon runners that are just complete mouth breathers, or you see someone like on the other end of it, Sha'Carri Richardson, you know, that sprinter. She's an American sprinter. I think she does the 100, 400, can't remember. I know she definitely does those too, but smashing everything. And you see videos of her mouth is closed the whole time. She's sprinting 400 meters, nasal breathing. There's that tennis player, Iga
Swiatek. She's
She's
Canadian.
Canadian. Yeah. You see pictures and videos of her training, and she tapes her mouth when she's training. Why? Because your body uses oxygen more efficiently. Your diaphragm functions more efficiently when you are nasal breathing and when you're actually breathing less.
Yeah. And we see elites doing this. And we know at the very elite level, the difference between gold, victory, World Cup winner, and runners up, margins.
Yeah.
It's 1% barely. And so if nasal breathing, nasal breathing gives them that edge. So if elite athletes are doing it and they want every single edge possible, just for that 1%. Yeah. Imagine what it can do for the layperson. It's more than 1%.
Exactly. Which isn't to say that you only have 1% to gain, just because the athletes are doing it. Like they're already in peak physical fitness. The margins that it's going to give you as a layperson, as a regular person, are massive. I want you to go into how you approach someone who wants to go into breath holding, and where would you start them?
Breath holding as in maximum breath holds?
Not necessarily. How do you improve your Bolt score? Where would you start?
Gotcha. So we've got to start with functional breathing. I don't teach any of my clients maximum breath holds anymore until at least the third week, at the very least. So it begins with cultivating that relationship with your breath. That's the first and foremost. Nasal breathing to begin. We can do breathe light, slowing down the breath and cadence. And there's a bunch of exercises we can do. It's going to get technical, so I won't necessarily go into that. But first and foremost, it's create that relationship with your breath, and 4 main things. Number 1, nasal breathing, strictly nasal breathing. Number 2, tongue posture. Number 3, steady breathing. Number 4 is deep breathing. Don't bother doing the latter until you've covered the prior. Meaning if you don't have nasal breathing down, don't bother breathing deep. And if you don't have steady breathing down, don't bother with deep breathing. So there's a hierarchy of established things.
Yeah, you want to make sure that throughout your day, you want to pay attention to when you're mouth breathing. And I can guarantee it's probably when you're stressed, when something's happening. And just being able to reground yourself, switch back to nasal, and try testing yourself when you're working out. I think that's a great challenge for people to start with. You see it all the time at the gym. People walking across the gym, mouth agape. I'm like, close your mouth.
Yeah. If you can hear yourself breathing, that's a danger sign. In Taoist philosophy, they say there's only 3 stages. Taoist philosophy, they say there's only 3 stages to breath mastery. Stage 1, others do not hear you breathing. So if other people can hear you breathing, you already failed stage 1. Stage 2 is that you do not hear yourself breathing. Silent. Stage 3 is to breathe as if you're not even breathing, which is that true deep breath. It's like the bottom of the ocean. We're still yet to find it. So Sha'Carri Richardson, when she's sprinting nasal breathing, can others hear her breathing? No. She's probably going to be the one with the steadiest breath. And your breath is going to give everyone an indicator of how much stress you're under. So when you can maintain that nasal breathing, even under stressful situations, your body actually receives a signal, you're safe, you can go, you can keep going.
So true. So for people who, beyond specific programs, and I know you would approach every client differently in terms of how long they should start doing their breath holds and how you're going to approach their certain case. Would you advise that people start with like a breathe light? Like if you're trying to downregulate at night, if you're going to sleep, what would you suggest that people start with? Just 20 minutes of light breathing in and out through the nose to downregulate? Where would you start people?
I would say start with a cadence hum. Start with humming. I like to start with a 4 in 4 hum. It's not the right fit for everybody. Some people might be a better fit for a 3-3. Some people might be a better fit for a 5-5 or 4-6. 4-4 is a pretty good baseline to start. So in for 4 seconds, nasal, steady. Hum for 4 seconds, nasal, steady with the tongue on the roof of your mouth. Do that for 3 to 5 minutes. See how your body feels.
Why the humming?
That activates the vagus nerve. So when your vagus nerve is activated, you're default in a rest and digest, relaxed.
You're able to relax.
That's also going to open up your airways, produce more nitric oxide, clear your airways, dilate your blood vessels, your airways, so you don't have to work as hard to breathe.
Yeah, which is also huge for your ability to digest. For those people who have IBS or digestive issues, humming or breathing light before meals can help shift you into that mode. And if you find that you tend to immediately react to foods, or you're struggling with bloating or anything, that might be a great place to start. Because digestion starts in the brain, and you want to downregulate your nervous system before you do that, so that your body can actually absorb the nutrients that you're eating, because you're not what you eat, you are what you absorb. Bit of a tangent, but very important, especially for people who are trying to build muscle. It was so nice to have you. I want you to plug yourself. How can people find you if they want to work with you?
So my address is...
I said number.
So you can find me on Instagram. I'm Peak Breathing, peak like top of the world, Peak breathing. So you can find me on socials, Instagram. My Facebook is just my name, Aakrist. And I have a program coming up, the Peak Breathing Academy, which the next cohort begins June 23rd. And this runs about every 3 months. So this is a 6-week program where we go from establishing functional breathing, so you're sleeping well, you're digesting well, your mind is sharp, you have energy for your days. And we build gently into high altitude training, so you have that superhuman endurance. It's not a performance enhancing drug, but it will enhance your performance. It's not an anxiety medication, but it's going to give you this powerful tool to manage your anxiety masterfully wherever you 100%.
Go. 100%. And I did that myself, and it was life-changing. And I still take all the tools with me that I learned from Aakrist, so highly recommend. Thank you so much for coming. This is awesome.
My pleasure. And one more thing. As a thank you for all the people watching right now, I want to offer them a special offer. So if you come to me, if you message me from this podcast, if you're listening from here, you'll receive a bonus one-on-one session when you do apply to work with me.
Which is pretty freaking awesome. So hop on it. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining, guys. This was awesome. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next time. Bye.